Hello, and welcome to Or Something. I'm Kristen, and this is Carla.
Hi.
And we are each going to talk about the origin of something.
I just waved to my microphone, like.
And I didn't even see it.
Oh, I wasn't waving at you. I was waving at the microphone.
At all the people who are listening. Oh, half a person. Like my sister listens, but only when I remind her.
I'm not sure I even listen. Oh, my God.
I definitely don't. And I'm supposed to be editing. Yeah, we lived it.
It's just like radio silence. We didn't press record and publish.
It's like back in the good old days when we had to record onto cassettes from the radio, and you just wait for that like second.
You had to catch it.
You had to
but
catch
you keep
it
pressing like
without the
record
announcer
over and over.
Yeah.
Why don't you just record the whole conversation? No, waiting for the good parts. Okay, so how are you?
I'm doing good. I started kickboxing, so I went every single day this week.
Ooh.
So far. Ooh, ooh.
In anticipation of my visit.
Exactly. So I can like roundhouse kick you right
Carl's
out the door.
Over.
Quick, everybody, prepare.
For anyone who doesn't know, and anyone, I mean, maybe possible future listeners, they listen as like an example of what not to do with a podcast.
Hey, whatever gets people listening, I'm fine with it.
Right. Joke's on them. What? I don't know if we explained this, but you live in British Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
I almost panicked. Like, can I say that? I'm like, I didn't give your address, which, by the way,
you live at 123
123
Street.
Yeah, Big Street. And I live in Alberta. Boo. And
for some reason that none of us know why anymore.
Look.
Yet she defends it to the death.
Not to the death. It's just, it's, you know what? Alberta has its moments. Skies. It's beautiful. It does. Just, there are a lot of yo-yos here. To be fair, though, there are a lot of yo-yos everywhere.
Yeah, so they're in BC,
it's just tough here as a normal, sane person.
Well, because it's so ugly. And it's
so ugly. Okay.
And the weather's terrible.
I have to say, this year, though, has been glorious.
Really?
No rain, so everybody's crying like we have no crops or anything.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't care.
Major drought this year. The farmers are all killing themselves.
I don't care. And then I get a bunch of hate mail from farmers. Oh, God.
Yeah, for some reason, farmers are like a big part of our audience.
It's on AM radio right now.
It is. Oh, my God. All that trash talk about AM radio.
Right?
And then they offered us a deal, and we just snapped it up immediately. Yikes. Yeah, what kind of deal?
We never get on AM radio. Especially in Alberta.
What did we talk about last? Oh, yeah, yogurt, fruit on the bottom, and kindergarten.
That's right.
I have nothing related to either one of those.
I sort of do. I was thinking how it was really shoddy research on my part, but I don't mind. And again, for the 1.5 or half a listener, I just want to remind people that we know how to do research. We really do. We went to university, right? We know all about our primary sources and all of that stuff.
Nights researching papers and
yeah, so
we know how to do it. We just don't want to.
We just don't want to. And so I want people to just imagine they're sitting by a campfire or sitting at a table having coffee with their friends, and they, or us, not your friends. We'll never be your friends.
That's harsh.
No, because we don't talk to people.
Oh, fair enough, Andrew.
Them.
I'm like, what did they do to not get
Nothing.
your friendship?
It's just, we hide in our houses.
That's true. That's true.
We're in the forest.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's almost like a question comes up and Google is at our fingertips and we'll Google, and that's basically it.
That's the extent of it.
But I was listening to a podcast where I just started it, and the lady, she is going to talk about the victims of Jack the Ripper.
Ooh.
And she said people don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And she goes into all these cool reasons why and blah, blah, blah. But she made a really good point that there are so many, like, I think they're called, what's that term? Like couch detective? Is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, or I forgot what they're called. But yeah, like where people
there are actually huge networks of them that are actually solving crimes. Like, they're actually doing stuff. It's crazy.
A lot of them that are talking about, like, say, Jack the Ripper. A lot of them are men. A lot of them are, like, misogynistic. These are the points she's making. And she said they're actually just reiterating a bunch of stuff that isn't actually fact at all. And they're running with it. And they've been running with it for, like, so long.
And then it just builds and builds, and that becomes the truth, right?
Yeah, exactly.
History.
And so she's going back, and she just kind of made a good point that, like, if you actually know how to do research, you're going to find different answers, right? Like, if you actually... And so I just thought it was kind of funny that she said that, because I admire that. And I think there's a lot of podcasts where they do really good research, and they delve, and they talk to experts and go to the primary sources. And I think this week was the first time where it bothered me that I wasn't going to go into the proper research. Yeah, it really, really, I could feel the limitation. Yeah. And I was just, I'm so angry at my topic and so angry at the research. Yeah. So it's like, it was quite, and I was determined. I'm like, really? This is the topic that comes up when I'm determined to be a good little soldier? Like,
oh my gosh. It's so funny because I kind of was thinking the same thing where I was like, I kind of miss doing research because I really enjoyed that part of university. And I think I could have gone into a career doing research for people. Yeah. But, so I was like, ooh, okay, this week I'm going to do, because my last week one was a little bit short. So I'm like, I'm going to, delve into this. And there are a lot of like offshoots of it that I could have gone into, which I didn't. But even so, like, as I started going through it, I was like, okay, like the excitement had kind of worn off. I'm like, and then I realized I was like cutting stuff out. I'm like, I don't need to mention that guy. And he's like the significant thing that gets mentioned in all these other spots. I'm like, oh, I guess I do need to mention him. Damn it.
I know. But then I'm like, no, our podcast is a conversation. And so mine is going to be very conversational this week, even though I have notes of pages. I have the sources. You should see, like, beautiful research.
Damn it. Footnotes and everything.
Yeah. Footnotes and everything. But
impressive.
Anyway, I don't know.
But no one will ever know. Oh.
No, they won't.
So funny. Oh my gosh.
Maybe in like season 4, if that ever happens with the show.
It'll happen.
We'll have like actual experts come on and just set us straight from the beginning.
Oh my god, please don't. Yeah, that would be funny, just going through everyone.
Just to laugh about
just like, you're wrong. You were wrong about that.
But
and
then,
you were wrong about that.
What's funny? I get such anxiety because I think, like, what if somebody comes on and they're a supposed expert, but then it's kind of like the internet comments, right? You go anywhere, Reddit or Quora, is that what it is? Where someone will answer a question and they look completely qualified, right? But then someone else comes along and they're like, well, actually, according to this research and blah, blah, blah.
But that's
they have a totally different answer.
That's I think the biggest thing that university taught me was that you can argue anything and be right. Like, you can argue any point and be correct about it, because there is usually research that can point in any direction.
Yeah. And then if you want to pick apart the research, then there are going to be 2 different people who are also
on opposing sides, like
opposing sides, but are kind of right.
Because it's also like, that's the academic world and that's the scientific world, and that's the point of it, is that you're supposed to put holes in other people's stuff and try to make sure that the actual information that's out there is like tried and true, kind of tested stuff, right?
Yeah. But then you look at like historical stuff, and then it's a whole other wrench in the thing of like, where did these sources even come from, and are the
like who wrote the sources, and how you can't go back and rewrite this, like have someone else write the Bible or whatever, right? Like, let's have like
the
Mary write her
accurate document
chapter
of our time.
What?
The most historically accurate document of our time.
I know, right? Of all the things for me to use as a historical document, really. And I said, I don't know if you heard me when you were talking, but I was like, we can't go back and have Mary rewrite or write her chapter. Like, first of all, they're not called chapters. I don't think, anyway. Jesus is rolling.
Damn it! Why do I talk over you? Why do we talk over each other? It's like we always. I'll go back and listen. And, oh, that's true. Oh, I'm disappointed. That's what this is?
Oh,
Jesus.
my God. I did not sign up for this. You tricked me. How dare you?
friends don't talk to each other.
Should I start this week? Did I start last week?
I have no clue who started last week.
I think you started last week.
Yeah, go for it then.
Okay. Unless you want to get your stuff over with, since you seem to hate your topic this week. Okay.
No, I'm pushing it far away from me. No, mine's just more of a conversation anyway, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this idea came to me over the weekend when I was watching Anne of Green Gables, which I haven't watched in forever. But it's
the original? Like with...
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah, with Megan Follows in it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It's like... It's one of my favorite things to watch when it's like cozy and fall outside.
Perfect
it's like,
fall, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't get through all of it because I ended up getting bored, where I was like, wow, I'm really used to watching stuff that has more action in it. Or maybe I'm just dead inside. I don't know. Either way.
That did not go where I thought it would. Oh, I love watching it, so cozy, nostalgic, but boy, did I get bored.
That's basically life with me right now. Like happy 1 second, and the next second it's like, this all sucks. Okay, so I was watching Anne of Green Gables, and Anne goes into Lawson's General Store, and the clerk lady there says that Matthew will buy anything that she says is nice from the catalog for Anne.
Okay.
And it made me wonder when catalog shopping began.
Oh my gosh.
And then, because I was like, wow, that's really early, the catalog.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I wonder when catalogs started. Like, what's the origin of catalogs?
Please tell me somebody named George Catalog made the catalog.
No. That would have been awesome. We can rewrite history right now.
Yes.
It all began with George Catalog. And then it ended. And then we had consumers distributing. Right? Because then it made me think of consumers distributing immediately, because how could it not?
Yeah. Did Americans have that?
Yes, and I will get to it. Don't worry.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm way too excited.
I'll get to it.
You don't understand. When I was a kid, we'd go to the store thing front. Mm-hmm. They had a storefront where you go and pick up your packages, right?
Yeah.
And the catalogs were just on these tables.
Yeah.
I was
and they had the order forms there. Yeah.
Yes. And I just looked at the catalog, get all excited. And I'm like, I think we only got one thing from there. Our China set, which we still have.
It's your greatest family heirloom.
Well, hell yeah, especially after this. Oh, I'm so excited.
I feel like it was always me and my brother and my sister there. I feel like my mom let us go in there when she was like going to the liquor store or something.
They left us there all the time. They were babysitting.
And then we'd be like, oh, can we get this? We wanted to order this. I feel like the one time that we actually got something was like some piece of jewelry for my mom, I think. And it was like a big deal because we all chipped in for like Mother's Day and got it for her. I think it was one of the first times that we actually like bought stuff kind of on our own for her.
Aww.
Like without an adult there to kind of guide us, which is why we were at Consumers Distributing and not a real store.
I love it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the first catalog ever in the history of anything was published by Aldus Pius Manutius in Venice in 1498.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
No.
Yes.
So I'm dying right now.
I know. The invention of the printing press, which was around 1440, allowed him to efficiently produce the first printed editions of many Greek and Latin classics. So
Wait, so do you think there were people running around before the printing press just with like copies of papers, like check off the list, right? Like, you know, people going door to door. They must have had a system of catalogs before it was printed.
They didn't. Why would they? I don't know. How could they?
Or like
They're just going to chisel out or like handwrite a catalog page for everybody?
No! The guy, he goes door to door and he's like, how many eggs or vases do you want? And they're like, put me down for 3. Shut up.
It had to start at some point,
I know,
right?
So
like that never happened.
I'm having like a meltdown because this is the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Okay, so he was printing. He created his own printing press like company. So it's called the Aldine Press in 1495.
Whoa.
And so he was printing all of these first editions of many Greek and Latin classics. This guy was like, he was really like people talk about him in this really interesting way. He really wanted to print stuff in the Greek language, and a lot of people had stopped doing that. So he was actually printing the classics like in Latin and Greek, like in those languages.
Wow.
And he was like on this mission to disseminate this information from the classical guys that were writing at that time. He thought it was really important. So he was kind of like a revolutionary guy in certain ways.
Yeah.
So he ended up printing a catalog of all of the books that he was printing so that people could see what he had available. And fun fact, he produced these small portable books, which revolutionized personal reading, and they're the predecessor of the modern paperback. Isn't that cool?
What? Why don't we talk about this guy? He sounds like freaking...
I know.
Like,
I put that in there, and then I was like,
so
okay,
clever.
that's going to be another episode.
Right? Mm-hmm. Dang.
And then after that, it seems like nothing really different from catalogs. Like, I think people were doing, like, printing catalogs, but nothing else, like, really happened much differently for the next, like, 200 years. It just was kind of the same thing.
Oh, okay.
And then, in 1667, an English gardener named William Lucas published the first seed catalog with seed prices for his customers.
I should have known.
Right? And then the trend traveled to colonial America when William Prince, and he had his company that he ran was called Prince Nurseries, published a catalog of fruit trees in 1771.
What?
And the Prince Nursery catalogs were around from 1771 to 1865, and they are now recognized as a major contribution to horticultural literature.
I need all of them.
When I was kind of looking at this stuff, they were saying, like, if you want, it seems to be kind of a thing that people collect, like, historical catalogs, almost in the same way that they collect books. Because if you think of it, it's a really good record of what was happening in life at the time. It's what people were buying and what people, like, showing what was for sale and all of that kind of stuff.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's a pretty good reflection of what common everyday life was, right?
Oh man. Okay, mind blown.
Okay, so at the same time, while William Prince was doing his thing with seeds, Benjamin Franklin got busy inventing the mail order concept.
Sorry, I like that sentence. Benjamin Franklin got busy. I thought you were just going to stop there. I'm like, okay. Things took a strange turn.
I actually had to look up Benjamin Franklin because I knew he did a bunch of stuff, and he was a president at some point. But I was like, what else? Like, what did he do? Like, which one is he? Right? Because there's so many freaking big, like, American guys who did all this stuff. Thomas Edison and whatever the guy was I talked about, Mac and Cheese, Thomas Jefferson, like, whatever. I don't know what else he did, but they all seem to be presidents at some point, and they all seem to invent a bunch of crap and, like, whatever. Don't get me started about all the, like, maybe that's a whole different podcast talking about how, like, they all had these little guys who, like, worked for them. They didn't even do half the inventing themselves.
Oh my god, I love where this rant is going. Like,
why am I so angry about it? Oh my gosh. So Benjamin Franklin is the one that did the kite experiment, and he invented the lightning rod. So he was the lightning guy with the key on the kite.
Oh,
right? Yeah. He might have also been the apple on the head one, the gravity guy, but maybe not. I don't know.
Isn't that Newton?
Oh my god. Yes.
Yikes.
Shut up.
Delete.
Delete. Oh, I gotta edit it really quick. Oh boy. Oh my god. Okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. There. In 1744, Benjamin Franklin published the first catalog for, like, mail order. So he invented the whole idea that they could purchase something from the catalog. So the catalog was no longer just something that listed out what they had for sale.
Wait.
So prior to this, it just listed out what they had for sale, but they still, the customers still had to come to the individual or come to the store,
right? Like
purchase the items.
Mail flyers, right? Like Canadian Tire comes.
Yes,
you obviously can't order it like from. Oh wow,
yeah.
Okay,
yeah. So In 1744, he published, this is the name of his catalog. It's called A Catalog of Choice and Valuable Books, consisting of near 600 volumes in most faculties and sciences. That was the whole title.
That's so catchy.
I know, right? It really has a ring to it. It just rolls right off the tongue. So on the opening page of his catalog, the terms of sale for the books he offered are clearly described. So he has a whole bunch of information on this page for the people to come to a certain place to buy the books, which was nothing new because that's what all the other ones had, saying they'll be for sale starting at 9 a.m. at this location. This is what I have to offer, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But the thing that's majorly different that he was the first one to do was that he also put in the book a sentence that says, those persons that live remote by sending their orders and money to said B. Franklin may depend on the same justice as if present. So he said that if people weren't able to come to the sale, if they sent their order in and sent money to him, he would honor it and he would send them the book.
Dang.
So it was the very beginning of the mail order catalog.
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
So it wasn't until about 1830 that mail order catalogs became more of a thing. The first ones were largely for seeds or nursery items, so gardening items.
Yeah.
And the Tiffany's Blue Book was a mail order catalog created in 1845.
Ooh.
That was one that people said was one of the first ones that a major company did in the States.
Huh.
So, outside of the States, in 1861, this guy's name is Sir Price Jones. So his last name is Price-Jones, spelled with a Y, Price with a Y.
Yeah.
But his first name is also Price
with a Y.
Price Jones. I thought it was a mistake, but I looked it up in a few different things, and I'm like, nope, this guy's name is Price Jones.
Oh, man. Okay. Kudos to whoever named him, because
exactly. So he was one of the first entrepreneurs to create mail order stuff on a mass scale. He was Welsh, and he started out selling only woolen goods from Wales.
Sorry, what year was that again?
In 1861.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's almost 100 years after Benjamin Franklin started doing, created the first mail order catalog.
Yeah.
So with the creation of the modern postal service, the invention of the postage stamp, and combining that with the expansion of the railway system, which was the ultimate trifecta, he was able to sell products to customers in rural locations. So people who weren't able to come to him, he was able to get it all out to them.
Right.
And he promised next day delivery. So
Whoa,
Amazon anyone?
Prime.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Jeff Bezos, is that you?
Yeah, he's
Jeff
really 3,000 years old.
Yeah, he probably is, for crying out loud.
Yeah, really.
So he had a whole bunch of famous clientele, like Florence Nightingale, Queen Victoria, and a whole bunch of other royal households throughout Europe. He grew it to a massive scale where he was sending stuff all across Europe. It became huge. So he was one of the first ones to do this mail order stuff on such a huge scale.
Yeah.
In 1872, Aaron Montgomery Ward created a mail order business called Montgomery Ward. Really original name.
Better than Benjamin Franklin's.
He was able to lower prices for people because he was cutting out the middleman at the general store. His first catalog was a single sheet of paper with a price list. And within 2 decades, his catalog grew into a 540-page illustrated book selling over 20,000 items.
Whoa!
He is largely credited for producing the first mail order catalog that was meant for the general public.
Oh!
So before that, I think it was pretty, the actual mail order stuff was for kind of higher up people or for specific groups of, if it was,
business type or firm type.
Yeah, like, or for farmers, where it's like only farmers would get that stuff. So his stuff was for like everyday items for everybody.
Ooh.
By 1904, 3 million customers were on his catalog mailing list. Like 1904, 3 million. Yeah.
Dang.
And
mind you, they had a lot of time on their hands.
They needed
and
goods.
writing letters. Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
No, they just needed to write letters. Dearest catalog. Like an apple today.
Would you be so kind to send me more apples? Oh my
also,
God.
have you heard from Jerry?
And it has.
Jerry, another fine historical name. Yeah.
Jerry.
I'm the worst. Continue.
Oh my God. Okay. This is a really fun fact. August 18th is considered the National Mail Order Catalog Day because this guy, Montgomery Ward, published his first catalog on August 18th in 1872.
What? So close to my birthday? Oh man, I have to ramp up the
right?
celebrations, right?
You better order yourself something from a catalog.
Right? Another catalog.
Richard Warren Sears. I guess I just have a whole bunch of stories of individual people that did stuff with catalogs, but here we go. Richard Warren Sears started selling watches through mail order catalogs in Minnesota in 1888.
Watches?
So Sears started as watches being sold through mail order catalogs.
Sorry.
They didn't have any stores or anything.
I just gloss over that it's the first Sears catalog. I'm like, watches?
Watches?
Thinking about the logistics of like mailing these fragile watch pieces to people. And then I heard Sears after, and I'm like, oh, Sears! Oh, it's a donkey.
Oh. So by 1894, so he started selling watches in 1888. By 1894, so that's 6 years later, the Sears catalog had grown to 322 pages, featuring sewing machines, bikes, sporting goods, cars, and like all kinds of other stuff.
Wow.
In 1895, Julius Rosenwald became part owner, so they created Sears, Roebuck and Company.
Right.
And by the next year, dolls, refrigerators, stoves, and groceries had been added to the catalog.
Oh,
so
man.
By this time, they had a 532-page catalog with the largest variety of items that anybody was offering. And by 1906, they had opened a catalog plant, and the catalog had become known as the Consumer's Bible. So they had a whole plant just to create their catalogs.
That's nuts.
In 1933, they produced their first Christmas catalog. It's called the Sears Wish Book.
No.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I think I have an unhealthy obsession with Christmas catalogs. Like
I love
when
Christmas
I get
catalogs.
the Indigo Books one and Canadian Tire and Lego,
Oh my
I lose
gosh.
it.
Canadian
I don't
Tire
usually get anything, right? But like, yeah, I kind of hope that never. I know it kills trees and blah blah blah, but like, dang, it's just so satisfying.
You know what it kind of made me think of too that's really fun that I don't care about much, but the Avon stuff.
Like I never did Avon, but damn, I was obsessed.
I used to have some Avon people usually that I worked with in the offices that I've been in over the years. And there would always be one person that would bring their Avon catalog in, and I was like, yeah.
Yeah, the Tupperware one was pretty fun too. Like
I never got the Tupperware, saw the Tupperware
It
one.
made the rounds a little while ago, but I would never actually order though.
I would order some stuff from Avon, but only more just like out of peer pressure than anything. I just like looking at the catalog.
Me too. I wonder what that means. Just browsing a catalog. Why it's so satisfying. But anyway.
I think it's kind of the same thing as online shopping, where I like go online shopping, I put a bunch of stuff in my cart, and then I just close the tab.
That's true.
It's really satisfying.
Yeah, it is.
You think about what your life would be like if you had that one thing. If I had 10 t-shirts from Old Navy, what would my life be like?
5 of them would end up in the garbage immediately.
Okay, so after World War II, the population of the U.S. suburbs rose quickly, and a new age of consumerism had started. Shopping malls started to become a thing. At this time, In 1963, J.C. Penney launched their first catalog. So we've jumped quite a bit. We're in 63 now, 1963. They were one of the first places to use the catalog as a supplementary channel. So that means that they already had physical stores, and then they created a catalog after that. Which most of these other places, even Sears, started as...
They were the catalog.
As a catalog, and then ended up creating hubs. A lot of them had to create, warehouse areas so they could ship stuff and whatever, and then ended up building stores out of that. Yeah.
Whoa, okay. Interesting.
So J.C. Penney was one of the first ones to have their stores first, and then use the catalog as a supplementary way to be bringing money in.
Yeah.
They made it possible to order from their catalog while also visiting their physical stores. For years to follow, a lot of companies started using the catalog as one of the main tools of direct advertising, and were able to expand their businesses that way. Oh. So, all the stuff that we just mentioned now, like Canadian Tire and all those places where it's we like seeing that stuff, and it makes you, more likely, I think, to buy there. It's direct advertising, right?
Yeah.
For example, in 1982, catalog sales for Victoria's Secret accounted for 55% of their $7 million annual sales. So it's more than half of their sales.
Just laugh.
Stupid Victoria's Secret. It's so ugly. I don't like their stuff. It's so ugly, it's one thing.
And their underwear is the worst. I hate it so much.
I just don't find it. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know.
We're not judging. Yes, we are.
And so, apparently the number of catalogs mailed, that are being mailed, peaked in 2007. The recession at that time caused retailers to slice catalog budgets, and at the same time, there was a rise in online sales.
Right.
So at that time, catalogs became much less of a thing, because now you're buying stuff online. Basically, catalogs were the earliest form of online shopping.
But that's interesting that the recession, do you think, any room for even just the smallest bit that it wasn't only the rise of the internet, online shopping, that it was actually just too expensive to make them anyway, regardless? That's kind of an interesting...
Yeah, it wasn't just online. It happened at the same time. So the retailers were trying to cut their budgets at that time.
No, I know. And I think that's crazy because I always thought it was just the rise of online shopping that would make it obsolete, for anything in print.
I'm sure it would have happened. It just might not have happened at the exact same time, right?
Right.
Because I think a recession or anything, even with COVID or whatever, it's anytime something big like that happens, there's going to be a shift. And it's almost like this natural shift of that stuff was going out anyway, so it just makes it happen a little bit faster. Okay, so that's kind of the history of it. And now we're going to talk about what everybody has been waiting for. And that is the history of consumers distributing. And I did not remember what the name of it was, but I was there was that freaking place, the catalog store in the mall, and usually the dumbest malls too, the spaces they could never fill with actual real stores. But it was always busy. There were always people in there.
Yeah.
We were always in there. And I was so I had to actually Google.
Oh no!
Catalog
you should have just texted me because
in Canada in the 90s.
I know these things Byway, Woolworths,
oh my
Woolco.
God, Byway,
right? I just have a weird memory for that kind of garbage.
You know what's really interesting is that Woolworths in South Africa is a major grocery store chain, and it's actually pretty high end. It's kind of like a Whole Foods here a little bit.
Really?
And it's awesome. It's so good. And they call it Woolies. And I was Woolworths?
Woolies.
Why are we going to Woolworths? And they do have the department store kind of thing, but I think it started out just as a grocery store there.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
It's so crazy.
Woolies.
It's so funny. Yeah. Okay. So Consumers Distributing was a catalog store in Canada and the U.S. that operated from 1957 to 1996. 1957. Really? It was created.
I'm more shocked by 1996. I thought it ended earlier.
No, I knew it had to have been in the 90s because I was born in 82, and I know I was old enough, like I was at a certain age that I could go to the store and buy some stuff.
Yeah, good point, yeah.
It was created by two guys in Toronto, so it is Canadian of origin. At its peak, it operated 243 outlets in Canada and 217 in the U.S., so definitely more in Canada. And it was in every province in Canada.
Huh.
The main focus of the stores was jewelry, appliances, kitchenware, toys, personal care, discount furniture, electronics, and seasonal goods. The store layout consisted of a series of glass cabinets that displayed merchandise, and there were catalogs located throughout the store with request forms that customers had to fill out to order something. I totally remember that.
Oh my gosh. Were there pictures online at all, like of the stores? I have to Google.
No. Well, I don't know.
I'm going to check. Continue.
There were 2 main catalog launches per year, with seasonal mini catalogs issued more frequently to highlight certain items.
I don't remember getting... Did they send the catalogs out? Or just in the store, do you think?
I can't remember.
I can't remember either. Sorry, go on.
I feel like I remember the store so vividly, but I don't know if we ever got the catalog at my house. I don't think we did.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Huh.
So in the 1990s, it struggled to compete with Zellers and Walmart. Zellers. Oh, we loved Zellers.
I know.
And they sought bankruptcy protection in 1996, so they went bankrupt. And then there was some guy who had been an employee there or something that tried to reboot it and revitalize it or whatever.
Yeah.
So he started it back up again, but then it he didn't pay people. Like, it just sounded like he was terrible at what he was doing. So it ended up closing down again. He got into a bunch of trouble and whatever. Yeah, exactly. And that's it. That is the history of the catalog, and I guess mail order catalog.
Dang. My life is so much richer knowing all this. I love it. That was my favorite topic so far.
Really? Awesome.
Yes. I'm just... Dang.
It was so fun, and thinking about all the things that I could go, as other topics. Because in order to have this happen, you needed the printing press, you needed a postal system, right? Yeah. So they're with the invention of the penny stamp, like the guy in Wales, the penny stamp had to be invented so that anybody could mail anything anywhere. Yeah. In a certain range for that amount or whatever. With the railway systems, the infrastructure. Yeah. All of that kind of stuff had to exist first in order for this to actually work.
Well, hold on.
Right?
But all the way back in Venice... Oh, right. That was the non-delivery one.
That was just the first catalog where he's hey, here's what I've got available.
Right. So they'd have to go to
They still had to go in. Yeah, it wasn't mail order yet.
Kid to run.
But, I mean, what's his face? Benjamin Franklin in 1744 did the first mail order.
Right.
Right?
Okay, right. Man, I can't.
And then 1861 was the price guy.
I love it.
So he had, I think... he was able to do it on such a large scale because all that stuff by that point had been, the infrastructure had been put into place for it.
Yeah.
Cool, hey?
There almost needs to be a movie about the railway because there were a few that I've seen in my time. I watched a lot of old movies, and I think there was one with James Dean possibly where the guy's trying to get refrigerated truck kind of things for trains to happen. So he can sell,
that sounds
spread his fresh produce around or something like that.
I
don't know. It was an ice truck fridge thing. Whatever. But the point is all this crazy stuff was happening because people were getting so excited about trains, right?
Okay, yeah.
But there needs to be a movie that covers every single thing that was inspired by
the most boring movie that's ever been made.
God damn it. The best movie.
It'll just be The Postman with
So, keep talking. I need to grab a Kleenex.
Damn it, get your Kleenex.
Roll over here.
I wish you guys could all see the contraption that Carla has built for her recording. It's a blanket fort.
All right. Nope, still running out.
It's a blanket fort made out of one of those laundry drying racks. Ooh, that would be a good episode.
Perfect. All right.
Oh, I was talking about your fort contraption that you've made.
Oh, okay. And what did people think?
Everybody tell us what you thought.
Right.
I was saying that a drying rack, like the drying rack that you have there, I have the same one at my house, same kind of style, would be a good one to look into the history of, the origins of. Or not. That could be really boring.
That's okay. We'll have a boring episode where it's like we thought something would go somewhere and it didn't. All right. I suppose it's my turn.
Don't sound so excited.
Okay. We were sitting around around the fire, and the topic.
Oh, I love your fire pit thing. That's so cool. Is it
thanks.
Propane?
Costco.
Or is it
Costco catalog. Sorry, what?
Is it propane or is it like an actual wood burning fire pit?
Oh, it's real.
It's real?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I love it so much. Like, I have a bunch of firewood all over the house.
You're sleeping on it?
It's a fire hazard? No, it's like the greatest thing ever. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. We were sitting around cool fire, and we started talking about like military court and how it sounds like the higher ups are kind of getting away with like crimes. Like, I think in this instance it was like some general and some alleged sexual assault or something, and he couldn't be tried because he was too high up. I don't know, it was some weird thing where I'm like, what? And I thought, when did military courts even happen? Like, when did they start? And it's
you can't handle the truth.
Yeah, right. Can I just say, this is the most infuriating thing I have ever researched in my entire life. I have no answers for anybody. There are answers, but there also aren't answers.
Okay.
So I'm not really I did so much research. I'm going to show you how beautiful. I have pages and pages of notes and resources. Organized and everything.
Impressive.
But no, I'm so furious at this topic. We're going to talk about it instead.
Okay.
I'm a little bit off book here. Okay, so in my research, I was realizing that there's like two problems. Do I want to know why we have a separate military court?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I want to know the origin of it?
Right.
Of course I want to know the origin. What's the first military court?
Yeah.
Right? So the only thing that really stood out in terms of like a really disciplined, structured, like historical account of it was that historians kind of focus on, and I think maybe there's a bias there, is Roman times.
No way.
So they were having battles all over the place,
I
right?
guess they had such a huge army and stuff, right?
Yeah, and there were a lot of battles being waged. They basically had the whole like Roman Empire. They were obsessed with order and peace, but also making sure to inspire fear and awe and all the barbarians surrounding them, right? Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of battles. And they were like, so this is the frustrating part. So they were militaristic as a society, right? Mm-hmm. And they had this military court. What they did is they also had military camps during mm-hmm. any campaign. And within the camps, the tribunal, or I guess court, was like right in the center of these camps. So it was really important for them to have order and discipline and very clear rules for anybody who would try to like desert. It's very similar. All the things now that you think of in terms of like the laws that are broken in the military. So say like desertion, insubordination, but even like theft or property destruction. You know what I mean? Like anything that's in the military. Like they had the same problems back then, right? Like the same kind of. It's not like.
So there's not these crazy different laws or rules or anything?
No. And just punishments were slightly different back then. Like, I didn't really focus on too many of the punishments because that wasn't important to the topic. But, mm-hmm. Stuff like, oh, I'll cut your head off. Or like, oh, one of them was putting a person, what's that called? To die from exposure.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
That would be terrible.
Right?
Can you imagine that? Ugh.
Yeah. And
I mean, they should do it now. That's what they should do.
Right?
For the death penalty. Just leave them outside for a while.
Yeah. If they survive, great. Maybe they'll learn something.
Yeah.
They turn to psycho killers. Just running in the wild.
They're just feral.
So they had the courts, and they had the military commander. He would basically act as like the judge and jury in a way, and he'd be like, although I think maybe he had some input. Anyway, so I was like, okay, that's fine. But that can't be it. Like, it can't. So the way it made it sound through a lot of the research was everything was controlled by the Senate, and it didn't sound like there was a very clear division at first between military and civilian court, or just military life, basically, and civilian life. I was kind of confused. I'm like, well, how intertwined is this? Like, was there a very clear separation of...
Right.
And then I read further. Way at the end of all my research, I stumbled across that they did have civilian courts. It sounded like there was a civilian court and military, like that there were like different laws, like for, military people and civilians.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, there is a division then, question mark.
Well, I would assume like there has to be some kind of division because the civilians are never going to get charged with desertion or anything like that, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
So just a very basic differences, right?
But it sounded like the Senate and just whoever was appointed, like it was kind of, I don't know, roughly the same circles of people. Yeah. So going into the history of just courts in general, it's not as clear-cut as people think, right? Like you look at the UK judicial system, and I started reading a book actually about it. This lawyer, he wrote this whole history of it, and it's fascinating. But a lot, like by the, I think it was 12th century judicial system in the UK. It was basically before that, was like the king's court. Like the king would actually be the one presiding over like cases brought to the court.
Right.
And then it was like kind of divided up amongst like lords in the like further reaches, right? So not in the central area, but like where the king couldn't be. It was like these delegates, I guess.
Right.
But by the 12th century, it started getting like divided more, and people were appointed usually from the clergy. Yeah, the clergy and that kind of thing. It was still like, they keep saying division from monarchy, that's like the courts started being kind of separated, but it really wasn't, because the king would still appoint like knights and clergy.
Right, it was still the people appointed by the monarchy.
Yeah.
It just wasn't the monarchy doing it themselves.
Exactly, right. And then there were these two separate courts, so it was like the more severe, I think it was more severe stuff would go to the king's bench or king's court. I always get them mixed up. It's incredibly complicated for my brain. That's why I was having a meltdown, because getting into just simple like UK judicial history is complicated.
Well, because our judicial system in Canada works very similarly.
Right.
Like we have the Queen's Bench, like Queen's Court, whatever, like all that stuff. It operates in a very similar way.
Yeah. So that's just the civilian judicial system. So I'm thinking, wait. So we're going back to ancient times. They have their laws, they have their courts, they have their tribunals, right? Mm-hmm. But we didn't have an actual judicial system as we know it now forming until like way later. And then some military courts, in my research, actual military court, or the what's it called? Martial court martial. There we go. Sorry, it's called court martial. It sounds like it's like a verb, like to be court-martialed, but it's a noun as well.
Okay.
Some of them were established until like the 60s or 50s. 1960s.
What?
1948, I think, was one of the things in all these different countries. And then you look at the specific like military courts, and they have their what are they called? Like the different branches or levels, I guess you would call them, where it's like, I think it was summary court. So those are like the more minor offenses.
Okay.
And I think you would kind of answer to your like the superior officer, sort of like you. But then if you had the more serious thing, that was the court-martial specific. So like the more serious charges, I guess. Anyway, it's a whole thing. There's all these tiers, and then there's like the appeals courts for each of those things, right? So they can appeal. Like in the States, they all can appeal to the Supreme Court, which resides over every single thing. It's not like military court is like has an end and that's it. Like you can appeal to the Supreme Court. So even military court is underneath Supreme Court? Yeah. Whoa. That way no one in the military is above the law of the land, basically. Oh, so I didn't know that. I just thought military court was totally on its own thing. Me too, but they're not untouchable. Because I was wondering about that. I'm like, are they untouchable? Like, but they're not. And I think getting to that point would be incredibly difficult, right? Because proving that your case doesn't need to stay within the boundaries of a military court would be so hard, right? And then, plus all the rank issues and everything, right? That's what I was going to say, is that I think so much of the military thing, it's not necessarily that, like, I think so much of it is you can technically you can do that. You can fight that. You can go to Supreme Court. You can do those things technically. Yeah. But because it's such a, like, they have almost their own social code there and their own way of running things. And it's like, do you want to burn those bridges? Do you want to, like, fight that? And then if you stay in the military, then you're ostracized or you're whatever, right? Like, all these other things. And I mean, that's based solely on just what I've seen in TV and movies. Well, but so I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it's interesting. Well, this might kind of like show a little bit of a, maybe a bit of a, I don't know if it's a problem. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing, I think. So from just the Canadian Forces site, I'm just going to read this blurb because it's kind of. So the purpose of a separate system of military tribunals is to allow the armed forces to deal with matters that pertain directly to the discipline, efficiency, and morale of the military. The safety and well-being of Canadians depends considerably on the willingness and readiness of a force of men and women to defend against threats to the nation's security. To maintain the armed forces in a state of readiness, the military must be in a position to enforce internal discipline effectively and efficiently. Breaches of military discipline must be dealt with speedily and frequently punished more severely than would be the case if a civilian engaged in such conduct. As a result, the military has its own code of service discipline to allow it to meet its particular disciplinary needs. In addition, that's not important. But yeah, so basically it's to keep morale and discipline and everything in check. So it sounds like the military court is very much like, we need to do this fast. We're dealing with people who are taking lives and who could lose their lives, and the safety of our entire nation is in their hands. So we need everyone to be in line, to be taking this seriously, to take order, order is first, it sounds like. And it goes all the way back to Roman times, where in some of the sources, the same thing was like, order was the most important thing. Order and peace, discipline, structure, that kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, so that answers why people have the need for this separate court, right? Because, it is its own world, and they do have very specific laws that, like desertion and everything. That doesn't apply to any, like, Joe Schmo, right? It's just interesting. Sorry to totally cut you off, but it's interesting to think of. I've been watching a lot of ER lately, binge watching. And it's interesting thinking, like when you said it's life or death type thing, and it's like there are other industries that are also life and death that are quite intense, that are, they have to, everything needs to be dealt with quickly and efficiently and properly and blah, 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 because it's people's welfare is on the line. Right. But it's interesting that, like, I know in hospitals and stuff that, they can lose their license to practice medicine and that type of thing. They have to go through all these boards and stuff. But it's not an actual court of law. Right. Like,
which is interesting to me that the army has one, but then why don't doctors have an actual court of law?
Well, I think because
that's
if
interesting.
The hospitals unravel, it doesn't mean that the security of our country is going to be at risk.
True.
Because if our military is just in shambles and other countries are we suddenly are defenseless, that's a huge risk, supposedly, to, our country and
I guess
our safety.
It harkens back to, the Roman times where that was really legitimately true.
Yeah.
Where it was like the rise or fall of an empire depended on your army, right?
Exactly. And if you don't give the right as the others on, like if you are the place with the weaker army, you're going to be paying tribute to the Romans. Mm-hmm. You had to, right? Mm-hmm. And it was actually interesting because one person suggested that the Romans themselves weren't actually great strategists. They didn't really have a leader like, Alexander the Great or whoever that was like really obsessed with military strategy and was a genius that way, right? Or like the Genghis Khan types. That because as a society, they recognized the importance of like just the appearance of might and order, that it was almost like just their discipline and sheer determination, all the soldiers and everything, that's how they actually won a lot of their battles, because they just had like that pure grit and determination, and it wasn't strategy. And I was like, well, that's an interesting take on it.
America, anybody? Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so, and then I tried to look at like more ancient places like the Aztecs or the Maya, right? Ancient Egypt. And they were, again, they had to protect themselves. So it was very much like the military was, like they were separate, right? They had their like civilian laws, and then they had their military kind of laws or understandings, I guess. Then you had like the Code of Hammurabi, one of the very earliest laws ever, code of laws, I should say, ever created. And in that there is actually a few sections dedicated to like military life, right?
No way.
And military law, I guess. Yeah. So it was just this frustrating thing where like I can't answer my own question because like they like the courts, they existed, but they weren't entirely separate, right? They had judges, they had juries all the way back when, right? Like in Roman times, they had to ask a few people, I think, like, I don't know if civilians were ever allowed. Well, maybe the rich, like the aristocratic ones. It was always the aristocrats, the rich people who dealt with all this, right? They were always the commanders but then you go forward in time, and we didn't have a very specific court of law until like the 12th century, and even then it had to like develop. And then military court is like just, and I just couldn't
but I think like it sounds like it's something that, but I think you did answer it like with Roman times. It sounds like because they put that emphasis on order and all of that stuff, they realized that they needed to have specific laws and specific stuff for the army, and they had that. Like I think that probably is where, I mean, it sounds like it. I think it's always
but it already
existed
in the Roman times, right? So, or they developed it, but I'm just trying. It didn't go any further back specifically for the Romans, and that's what kills me. Where I'm like, so what about before that? Right? Like, it was one of those painful things of like I can't go far back enough to find the actual like first time that they were like, you're treated differently in this different thing because you're part of the military. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's there. It is there. It's just my brain isn't sussing it out.
It is there, and you can see it developing, right? Like you can see the
and
progression
I'm sure someone has an answer
now.
for me. They're like, actually, and I'm just like, but when was the first time that they really felt like they had protection, or that they really were uniquely, like that they knew, oh, I'm going to military court, and it must have just been, I'm going to answer to General so-and-so, and not a specific court or whatever, right? They just probably very quickly, like since the beginning of time, beginning of the wars and battles and everything. Like infantry is like I think the first like organized military they called it was infantry. I forgot which Sumerians maybe. I think it was the Sumerians. Could be wrong. But yeah, so they must have like answered to their leader, right?
Yeah.
It's just like I don't know it. But it's not satisfying. I don't know what to say.
But I think it's like the bigger anything gets, the bigger any group gets, the more you need to have rules in place to govern them, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So,
and the unified kind of American, because they had their military courts, court martials, whatever, but it wasn't until, I think it was the 40s. I could be wrong, but, they had a unified thing across all of the United States, like, not just each division had their own whatever, right? So they did have to have that.
And that's so recent. Like, that's less than 100 years ago.
I know.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that's the whole thing when you're getting a big population and everybody's kind of spread out and whatever, then it's like, well, you have to have certain rules. It's like anything. It's like the FBI, or it's like, when they started like that CODIS or whatever system, it's like that all of that stuff is fairly recent because they never really had a need for it before, because otherwise you've got some military guy being like, oh, my commander in this state slapped me on the wrist, I'm just gonna move one state over and be fine. I
don't know if it was that like clear cut, but like yeah. I kind of it was fun reading like the punishments though.
Did you read anything like or stumble across anything about like other countries' military stuff? Like, because I know, the States is obviously such a prominent thing because we see it in TV and movies.
Yeah. There was the Canadian one, which I had no interest in reading.
I liked that blurb though from their website. It was pretty well written.
Yeah. Yeah. My God, they're educated in the American or Canadian military?
What?
I did find a thing here. King Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden in 1621 was grounded on the need for honor, high morals, order, and discipline in a time when soldiers were generally considered barbarians and opportunists seeking the booty of war. So that was a fun little fact.
No way!
So each country and then each ancient civilization, like, you'd go back. But it's funny, not a lot of countries came up for military court, but they must exist anywhere there's a military. It has, like, I can't believe
must because they though? Because maybe they're just prosecuted in the regular court, but then have specific rules applied to them because they are in the military, right? Like they could be prosecuted for desertion, but a civilian could never be prosecuted for that. So they have a different set of laws that apply to them.
Like Sweden and Germany and France, like very kind of like Western type stuff, and like the Nordic stuff. And I'm just like, Anyway, this was one of those topics where I was excited to learn about it, but then I realized I think it would best be answered just by an expert because it is such a complicated thing. It doesn't sound like it, but actually, there are entire books written by like the guy, the lawyer. I'm sad I forgot his name, but because it was such a good book where he starts into the history of British law, and he is like, okay, this is going to be confusing and this sounds confusing, but blah blah, and he's just
well, because I think it's like it's a system. It's not just one thing that was invented and started and became something. It's a whole system. So I think that those things, they develop gradually, much more gradually than we think, and there's little key elements at certain times that progress it a little bit forward, right?
And they're so cultural. Like, even just with the UK thing, like a huge thing was, I didn't save that, but like, I think like a lot of the punishments were so severe, right? Like your hand would be chopped off and this and that. And it was very much of the time, or it was a cultural thing, and they're so intertwined, right? And that's, I think, where my frustration is, where I'm like, it's so separate and had to be developed over thousands of years or hundreds of years, whatever. but it always existed. I'm just like, no, it can't be both. It was the first time where, like, you want to go backwards into history to find the origin of something.
Yeah.
But it's right there in the 40s and 60s and 50s, the actual origin. And you're like, no, this isn't working.
You're like, no, that's not possible. It needs to be something more historical.
Like,
more ancient.
Yeah. Because it's there. And I'm like, I'm telling you, my brain almost melted.
Oh, no.
But it was really cool because it's like, it's that nice lesson of like, you might have Google and the internet and all these actual good sources available to you, right? Mm-hmm. Like military sources, law. I was on like law websites, all this stuff, like university websites where it's like, you know, you can pretty much trust the information to some extent, right?
Yeah.
And even then, it was just that thing of like, it's not good enough. I need to be in a library.
You know, and I kind of felt that way with my topic this week, too, because I was like, I could have gone so in depth, because it was a whole different way of doing business. Like, the whole mail order concept was completely different from anything that had existed before, and it was a whole different type of commerce, and it was a whole shift in the way people were doing things. But it also needed all these other things to exist in order for it to be created and to evolve. And like, what was the impact on the general stores, and what was the impact on this, and like all that kind of stuff. It's like, what? There's so much there.
Yeah. And I guess like it's clear, like you really do have to know the question that you're asking with research. Mm-hmm. Like I find that was a good lesson for me too, because you know, the origin of something isn't that simple, and what exactly am I looking for, right? The specific set of, you know, concrete, like military core where it's like official, you know?
Yeah.
Like the way we know it today, or did I want to know military justice back in the day, right? And it's like, but I wanted to know both.
I think it's good, though. I mean, I feel like I learned lots. Like, I don't know. It really gets you thinking about...
Yeah. And my other takeaway is some things I'm just not either meant to know or care to know. I'm never going to be a military history buff, ever. I've never had an interest in... So I'm surprised I even did this topic.
But the thing that I like about this topic that you have is the idea of, like, when did it get separated, right? Like, and the idea that because we're so used to treating military and having military being this thing that's very separate from us. Mm-hmm. But there was a time when that wasn't the case, where they were very close together and very common, like, because it was a lot more, there was a bigger need. I mean, people are going to get mad about that, but whatever. There's a bigger need for military back in the day. Yeah,
that's the thing, because conquest was such a real threat. Mm-hmm. That was all it was back in the day. Like,
and now it's more like economic conquest, right? Like, yes, military is still important, whatever, like, make whatever arguments you want, but now it's not as big of a part of our day-to-day lives.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, because it's not as realistic that, you know, the States is going to invade Canada just for the land and to subjugate us. Like, it's not in our thinking. You know?
But there was a time when that was what was happening, and they were fighting over everything, right? Fighting over new territory. You know,
I shouldn't put inside jokes into our podcast, but there we go.
That was awesome. I really liked that, and it totally made me start thinking about, like all the historical things and
never wanting to talk about the military again. That's going to be a nice chapter that I close forever.
And it made me think of that TV show Jag, which I've never watched, but it was all about it.
Wait, Jag was military?
That was military. I think it was military court, wasn't it? Wasn't he a lawyer or something?
Pilots or something. What am I thinking of?
No, I'm pretty sure it was like Air Force.
Oh, what am I thinking of?
I don't know.
Wings. Remember that show?
Oh my god. Yeah, that was just pilots. I love that show. Wings and Jag. Yes. Oh my gosh. No, the thing that I was thinking of that I was going to mention while you were talking about your topic was, remember, I can't remember how long ago it was now, but there was in Canada, in Ontario, that very high-ranking, I think he was in the Air Force, high-ranking guy who murdered a woman. He was like breaking into women's houses and stealing their underwear and doing all kinds of stuff like that, and actually ended up like raping and murdering a woman. I think he raped a few women. But I wonder, I think that he went through military court and then also civilian court. I don't know though. But he was like a big thing. Like because he was very high up in the military and did very horrendous things that were like serial, like he wasn't a serial killer, but
apparently there are quite a few that have just recently, like they appoint them and then it comes out like with the whole Me Too movement that they're just
crazy
and nothing's happening and nothing's being done about it. It's kind of like
until he rapes a man, then it'll change. Am I wrong? No.
No, you're not wrong. On that happy note, I am going to never open a military book or webpage ever again.
And I'm going to go read a catalog. I don't have any catalogs, actually. It's been a long time.
I do.
Do you? Damn it. You know what I want? I want the IKEA catalog. Although it kind of sucks lately.
It does suck lately.
Stupid IKEA really let us down. Okay. Talk to you guys next week. Bye.